Parshas Toldos deals with Yitzchak ben Abarim Shana, that Yitzchak marrying Rivka, and they had problems having kids, and they prayed to Hashem. Vayitzrotesu habanim v'kirba, and the children were agitated inside, and the Veltam. And why? Because Rashi quotes the Chazal that when Esav passed the house of Avodah Zarah, he ran to that, and he tried to get out. And when Yaakov, when they passed the yeshiva shul, he went out. So they were Vayitzrosu habanim v'kirba. So the Velt asked the question, why was Yaakov trying to get out? We have a tradition that before a child is born, when he's in the womb, there's an angel teaching him Kol HaTorah Kulo. And then whatever, before he gets out, he gives him a little pachi and he forgets it till he has the potential of warning. But you have the best Rabbi in the world. You have an angel teaching you. Why was he trying to get out? So the Velt says, with a chavrusa like Esav, you want out of there. In other words, we see the importance. Sometimes a chavrusa, the environment, could be more important than the actual class. You have to be, not only have the right shiur, the right Rebbe, but you also have to have the right environment as well. And therefore, when Vatomer in came, she says, what do I need this? Vatelach lidrosh es Hashem. So what's this? What do you mean? Im came lama anochi. What do I need this? So there's a famous pshaf in the Brisker Rav. The Brisker Rav, we know the Gemara tells us in terms of the obligation of Pru'avu. The Torah tells us Pru'avu v'kivshuha, that you be fruitful and multiply and conquer the land. And the Gemara tells us in Kedushin, if you learn out of kivshu, to conquer it, the mitzvah of Pru'avu is on the man and not the woman. In fact, there's an interesting Meshach Chachma that tries to show from the Psukim in the beginning of, in Bereshis, Noach, that really, perhaps originally, both men and women were obligated. It was only because afterwards, after the sin of Adam, of Chava, and the pain of childbirth, so then since the pain was so great, so therefore he didn't command women anymore after that. In fact, that's the Meshach Chachma Parshas Noach. It seems counterintuitive. If one mitzvah, a woman would be obligated, and that's to have children, since they're doing it. So why is it that they obligate men and not women? So that's what the one answer the Meshach Chachma gives, is because since childbirth is one of the most physically hard, terrible pains you're going to have, so therefore the God didn't want you to command D'archecha d'archei noam, the Torah's ways are sweet, and therefore God didn't want to command you in such a thing that involves so much pain. Or the second reason, because of the psychological factor, if the commandment of Pru'avu was on a woman, she'd have to divorce her husband, because you can't have two husbands, because you'd have to fulfill your mitzvah of Pru'avu. So therefore you put the mitzvah on the man, not the woman. So in theory you could have many wives, but the point being is you wouldn't have to divorce your wife if you both want to stay together. And so that over there, the Meshach Chacham points out, that's why you learned that from the Psukim. Originally both men and women were obligated, afterwards not. Either way, that's the halacha today. The Gemara in Javamas goes into the discussion. We paskin Pru'avu is only on the man and not the woman, and it goes into details of how many children you have, and Machlokas Beis Hillel Beis Shammai. We paskin that one has to have a minimum of a boy and a girl. And there's another mitzvah in Yeshaya, Loshev Shetzera, that you have to have as many kids as possible. But strictly speaking, to fulfill Pru'avu, you need one boy and one girl. Of course, this is a mitzvah out of your control. And therefore, as the Gemara says in Shabbos, one of the questions you'll be asked in Beis in Shamala is, did you try to, were you osek in Pru'avu? Not were you makaya in Pru'avu, not if you fulfilled the mitzvah, but did you try to, as long as you try to have kids, that's all you have to do. So we'll see, and in fact that's a discussion in terms of a famous Minchas Chinuch, in the first Minchas Chinuch on Pru'avu, a machlokas Minchas Chinuch and Ramosha and others. We'll get into it another time. What exactly is the mitzvah pruruvu? Is the mitzvah just the result? 9 months later, you have the kid. That's the mitzvah? No, the mitzvah isn't having the children. The mitzvah is trying to have the kid. And there are different, practical differences in terms of that, in terms of whether the mitzvah is the result, in terms of one I'll just throw out, but there are many more, but the mitzvah srichas kavana. In other words, if it's result oriented, we assume the kavana is an integral. Of course, you should have the appropriate kavana, but it's not an obstacle in performing the mitzvah. If the mitzvah is the osek, is the act of living with your wife, then one would need kavana to fulfill the mitzvah pruruvu. In fact, as we pointed, everyone agrees it's a mitzvah pruruvu. The question is whether kiddushin is a mitzvah, whether the whole purpose, whether marriage isn't a mitzvah per se, it's just a means of having children. The only way you can have kids is being married, so you have to get married. Or as the Rambam writes, no, even getting married itself is a mitzvah. So we see there's a mitzvah pruruvu, and it's only on the men and not the women. So the Brisker Rav says, she says, who needs this? I'm exempt from pruruvu. Women aren't chayiv obligated in pruruvu. So it's by Yisroel Abanim Bekira. I don't need all this pain. What am I doing it for? If I'm obligated in the mitzvah, so I have no choice. But since I don't have to do it, why do I want it? And what was Anochi? Not only so much the pain, but if I see what it's going to be, a bunch of, she didn't know it was two, a schizophrenic. One minute he's trying to go to the idol worship, another time he's trying to go to the yeshiva. So if it's this, it's better not to have the kid. In fact, that's the famous Gemara in Brachas with Chizkiyahu HaMelech and the Yeshaya HaNavi. The Yeshaya HaNavi approached him, there's a whole discussion who gets more covet over there, a Navi, a king. He approached him and said, why don't you have any kids? So Chizkiyahu HaMelech said, because I see Beruach HaKodesh with divine inspiration that I'm going to have also wicked children, and therefore better not to have any than to have the wicked. So the Navi answered him, why are you getting involved with the secrets of God? That's his problem. You have a mitzvah pruruvu, you have kids. Whatever happens, happens. It's not your problem. And then he said, okay, let me marry your child. And then basically he said, don't worry, then that's the Gemara, you can always do tshuva. So either way, so the Navi found fault with the king. Yeshaya found fault with Chizkiyahu HaMelech. The Brisker Rav points out, fundamentally Chizkiyahu HaMelech was right, meaning he had a logical argument. Why bring in wicked kids into the world? Better not to have any kids. The only problem was, you're obligated in pruruvu. It's not for you to make cheshbonos. It's not for you to make that decision whether you have to keep it or not. And therefore, that was the taina on Chizkiyahu. But over here, Rivka wasn't chayiv in pruruvu. She was exempt, and therefore she has the right to do it. In fact, there's a famous kasha we'll go into. We'll have a separate share on it. The whole question whether the avos kept the Torah. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, etc., they all keep the Torah. So one approach is that they kept the Torah, the Avos. That's what Rav Kook points out. The difference between Torah's Moshe and Torah's Avraham is Torah's Moshe is mandatory, is you have to do it. Torah's Avraham was voluntary. We know the Gemara tells us in Kedushin, Gadol ha-matzuva liyosa m'she'eino matzuva liyosa. Greater is the one who does a mitzvah is commanded than one who volunteers and does it. Why? So, on one hand, volunteering is greater. Like it's better to take out the garbage on your own than to BS. However, as Tosfos points out, but it's much harder to do when you have to do something. No one likes to be told what to do. It's much easier to do things when you volunteer. So they point out that greater is the one who's commanded to do so, and that's why Rav Yossi was blind. That's why you wanted to make, therefore the Gemara within Kedushin talks about making a party, in terms of knowing when you're obligated in mitzvahs, and therefore that's the whole concept of a bar mitzvah, bas mitzvah. You become obligated in mitzvahs. That's when you become obligated in mitzvahs. That is when you go ahead and make a party, because that's the ultimate simcha. So there's a whole discussion. If the Avos kept the Torah, then how do we explain the different cases where it seems they didn't keep the Torah? With marrying two sisters, etc. So we'll give different examples as we move on. So one of the answers of the commentators are that no, we have a concept we know, I think it's Rav Chaim Volozhin and others, or Chaim maybe, that we have a concept of Aveira Lishma, a very dangerous and difficult concept. That doing an Aveira sometimes for the sake of heaven. And so that's all, that was mostly more Kodama in Torah. Before the Torah was given, you had the concept of Aveira Lishma. It's a question whether it applies today, or Achama in Torah. But there's a concept of Aveira Lishma. So you do an Aveira for the sake of heaven. So basically, you look at the big picture and you say, I'm better off doing this Aveira because it's going to cause more good than harm. So the Avos kept the Torah, the Torah's Eino Mitzvah V'yosa. They kept the Torah as an optional thing, not something they had to do. So if someone's keeping the Torah today, is the Navi tells Chizkiyahu Melech, it's not for you to make cheshbonos, you have to do. But since the Avos kept the Torah voluntary, they volunteered the mitzvahs, so they saw the big picture. They realized that if you're marrying two sisters, that we have to create the Shiftei Kahal, the 12 tribes. So therefore there was much more room for the Avos, even though fundamentally they kept the Torah in an optional way, but they saw the big picture through the prophecy, the Nevuah, and therefore they realized in those cases where it's better to marry two sisters, and other places where they didn't keep the mitzvah, because since they didn't have to keep the mitzvahs, so therefore they only kept it voluntary, but only kept it when it made sense, when it made sense in the big picture. That's what the Brisker Rav says over here. A similar idea. Why do I have to worry about it? I'm not obligated in Puravu. So a man who's obligated in Puravu, Chizkiyahu Melech, he was rebuked. But a woman, who needs it? Of course, I'm saying halacha l'maisa, a woman also is involved in the mitzvah. Either the mitzvah of Sheves, of populating the world, or as I think the Karma Nasana writes in the second parak in Kedushin, she's a Messiah Lidvar mitzvah, that obviously the husband can't do it without her, so it's her mitzvah as well, etc. So either way, that's the pshat, the famous Brisker Rav, Lama Zeh Anochi. Fundamentally, she had a good taina. Who needs it? Lama Zeh Anochi is my kid's the schizophrenic, I don't want it, because a woman is exempt from Puravu, but Chizkiyahu HaMelech, who was obligated in Puravu, even though logically maybe it was a good taina, but when the Torah gives you a mitzvah, it's not the time for cheshbonos.